like to invite to the stage Fabro and Pipo Serrano that will be in conversation with Fabro today. Fabro is a member of our think tank and is part of the Institute for Society and Technology in Rio de Janeiro, which is one of our strategic partners of the think tank. Welcome and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Karina. Thank you very much, Fabro. It's great having you here with us. So as Karina was just pointing out, people like Fabro, some renowned, brilliant minds have been thinking around on digital future society and how blockchain, artificial intelligence could affect society. And as you were just telling me, you focused on several scenarios, and yours was public innovation. Which were the topics that in or connected to public innovation were the ones that you realized are more important?
Okay, the methodology we used here, it's about to create future scenarios for policymakers or anyone trying to understand how to move now. So get, for example, the Uber case that happened in Barcelona a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Should Uber stay or should Uber go? In 2013, we were talking about sharing economies, about collaborative economies and so on. Now we talk about contract economies because we understood it's not about sharing, it's about contracts and managing them. So if 2013 we could see that the sharing will become a contract, we could have taken actions and maybe there will be a Uber or a different Uber or no Uber and then we are fine, but no conflict.
Great, it sounds good, but let me tell you something. We are in a society and connected, intelligently connected or not, but connected, in where apps and services pop up every day. So this means that maybe we need permanent think tanks and permanent people thinking on how is that taking us to the place. And we are in a crucial moment.
I'll give you one of the scenarios that we created, which was back to the I'll say the one, my data, my roles.
Yeah.
This is a world where GDPR, like the General Data Protection rule, is well used. So I have my data, I have sovereignty on my data, and people care about the data. So imagine that in this world, I go apply for a job interview and I'm discriminated because they find I have diabetes, let's say. Mm-hmm. In this world, a policymaker could predict that you could ask for the data the company had on you and ask for a clarification. I mean, was a job for a secretary, what having diabetes have to do with that? I'll give you another scenario. I'll give you a scenario where data protection law is really flawed. Kind of, if there is damage, something happens, but apart from that, nothing. And data is really concentrated. Few companies have data, government doesn't have all the data. I cannot have the same mechanism.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that, and I think there is a debate that we talked yesterday, and it's pretty important, which is who should lead all this innovation and who should just kind of, we have to see if the same one who leads it can regulate it or how it works. But we'll go with that in a sec. When talking about public innovation, just to kind of bring the context in, we and you talked about the main challenges for governance for using blockchain, AI, and facing these public innovations. Which are the three, let's say, the three most important challenges right now? Okay,
the first challenge is inclusion. How do we use artificial intelligence with inclusion? I'll give a quick example about Brazil that doesn't even use artificial intelligence. They made it mandatory for someone to register school to use the internet. That created 1/3 of the classes to be with no students.
So you're telling me that in Brazil, where 54% of people have access to the internet, they discovered there was a new rule saying you can only register your kid to go to school through the internet.
There you get inclusion.
And then 30% of the kids are not going to school right now.
Because they don't have internet to register. Once you look it back, it's stupid. But by then, when you're applying technology, you have to have these lenses of inclusion up front. That's public innovation. It's for the public. The second one is how to hire technology. How to invest so much money in something that is so hard to define. What is artificial intelligence and how to hire it? And then we are seeing, when we had electronic government, movement in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Lots of technologies were done with copyright software, copyright algorithms. And now we have these white elephants in the administration that no one knows what to do with these mainframes and so on. Are we creating new white elephants? How to hire technology and how to use it? Do you rent it? Do you buy it? Do you do it yourself? And so that would be a second challenge. And the third one, I think, is similar to the private and public sector, which is user-centered.
Yeah, you were saying that human-centered. You know
Human-centered. What people are going to use? Because lots of time the government thinks about his problem. So my problem as a government is I'm spending too many hours registering kids by paper. So now everything is electronic. I solve my problem, but I haven't thought about the user. If they knew the user more than half doesn't have internet, would they have considered that option?
Definitely not.
And it's not about technology, but it's about cities, about government. It's not reinventing everything. Mm-hmm. But then technology brings challenges that are really new.
Okay, but then on the other side, and I think Fabro, and that's why I think Fabro's point of view is interesting. Let me say, it's from my perspective. You're a guy who are not just passionate on all these technologies, or you just hate them or not. You put everything on place.
Yeah.
You're not like on Fever. You left the Fever on site, and you can analyze everything pretty well. The thing is, if we try to change the world for better with technology, but at the same time we live in a world where I would say very little more than half of the global population don't have access to the internet, how do you do that? I mean, if we go too fast, we will have that digital divide, and we will add a second layer, which is, we could say it would be an administrative or social divide. People is going to be disconnected from governments.
So I can give you one example when I was disconnected from the people.
Yeah.
So it can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
So I was in a favela in the slums. There was a shortage of water, and I saw old women watering kids in the sun. So no water. She was wasting water, and I asked her, "Why are you wasting water?" And she said, "Because there are kids that are playing." On her perspective, it was about building the community, taking care of their own. In my case, I was an IoT, line of the water, let's regulate it. So the issue here is about governance. If you don't bring that woman to the government at decision makings, no one think about the community. So we can have a favela where the water is super well used, but they don't have health, they don't have security, because that thing is provided by the community. It's not necessarily about the technology, it's about how we create governance systems, how we include different voices.
Okay, slums are better organized than governments then, let's say, in a way. For some other examples of governments or the way they use it, you talk about the inclusion, and you said it many times, and I think that's really important. We talked about how I think it was 25% of women were in the industry with big companies of tech some years ago. If we talk about AI or blockchain, we've got numbers terrible. 10% if we look at, for example, Google, 15% if we look at Facebook. How are we going to create these new rules of the game if we don't count with women, with people from other communities and all that? How can we fix that? You've been discussing on that. How do we do it?
What I can say is that I can quote other women that told me so. So the one thing is that we are better than we were before, but we still need more diversity. So visibility matters. So some companies are trying, the CEOs have a quota for women. Countries like Norway, they have a quota for boards to have women. Others are doing by education to provide more incentives for girls to start coding, to start STEAM. So different ways to tackle. The only thing we cannot ignore is that we need to face the diversity issue. Otherwise, it will always be white male solutions. So I was passing by the Congress here, and I saw one stand for virtual reality, and all the faces were male and white using the glasses. this is not only stupid, it's bad for business.
Yeah, and that makes me think, when you said they were only male and only white, there is another effect that it's clearly on the table when discussing about public innovation, which are the automated decision-making services, AI and all that, and how machines determine and they decide if you deserve something or not, and they can recognize you and say, okay, you deserve it or not. And it's been proved that depending on male, female, or depending on communities, they cannot read faces the same way. So how does that work?
I think we need to think technology to enhance humans and not replace it. So when I talk about autonomous decisions, your mobile email spams email out by automation. You don't check it. You can check, but you don't.
Yeah.
But that enhances your ability to filter what you want to read. So using technology in that way allow us to be superhumans, more humans. It's the same as the letter or the computer. So AI and blockchain will come here. If everyone uses Bitcoin, that's not interesting. If Bitcoin can be used for bank inclusion, that's transformative. If you use your mobile just of yourself, not transformative. If you use your mobile to gain access to health access, that's transformative. So you enhance the human.
Yeah, definitely. It has to be that way. But on the other hand, we see, as you were saying, and I don't know if at ITS you've been able to study things like this, but you talked many times about, for example, the benefits of e-voting, electronic voting. How does that work, for example, in Brazil, in where maybe we can all think there are more toothbrush in the world than more smartphones than toothbrushes, and I think it's we've got more smartphones than people in the world. But as you said, sometime in many communities and countries there is one phone for 5 people.
Yeah.
So how does that work when they have to vote and digitally recognize a person?
That's 2 good lessons here. The one is about digital identity, and the second one is about trust, how to establish trust in the system. So can blockchain be hacked? Yes and no. The calculus cannot be hacked. But if you do a contract, a smart contract that is bogus, yes, it can be hacked. So this is how we steal money in the DAO, and this is how lots of things happen, because the code you create was floppy, and then you could hack it. And then can we say, let's all vote with blockchain because it cannot be hackable? If the code is flawed, but what is the level of trust we need? We just had one election in Brazil that was streamed live, was a Senate election, paper, and it was hacked. There were 91 senators, there were 92 ballots in the vote. All the streamers, live streaming to the whole Brazil, and no one knew how it was hacked. So is it about technology? It's about trust. How to establish the minimal level of trust?
And how do we recover the trust?
It's very hard to recover.
We've heard lots of things and connected to blockchain. We don't have to trust people, we can trust the technology and things like that. But how do you recover trust after what's happening in the whole world?
That's a good question. And I think you build trust with communities. So if you put people together to discuss and to find the common grounds, that creates trust. We see lots of trolls and hate speech online, and usually it happens most when you are not connected to the person. The more community is bounded, the less this kind of behavior is accepted. So you see this social media technology, we are adapting in the way we communicate. No one comes to the mom and calling her names, but it's easier in the traffic when you hit the horn, you call someone names. The closer the community is, more ethical values are embedded in it.
But in a way, it looks like we have to go back to the origins. You explained in some case that, I think it was in Rio Grande do Sul, there was someone in the government said, we need to ask to the people, how can we help them better, and were we not doing it properly? And they just reduced all the complaints into 5 or 10, and they focused on that, and they answered them, and they said, we're going to improve this. So that's like in the old times.
And in the old time, but not that old times.
No.
Because before the internet, the spread of news was really narrow. We have very few television channels, very few newspapers. Now we have more influencers, more voices, more... So you see, although we see that as a threat to democracy because we have fake news and so on, at some stage, we must recognize the diversity of visibility of influencers is way better today than it was before.
And what about governments? Because you said many times this is not only about e-voting. There are many more things to vote, many more things to talk, micro-voting, micro-subjects. Should we imagine, and I don't know, we'll talk about in some years' time, but should we imagine that on the next few years maybe we can vote for several things happening in our city, in our community, in our country? Is that going to be that way?
We can. Sweden has experience like that. Switzerland as well. So there are very countries who have this vote for something. But get Brexit, for example, or get other experience like that. I'm not sure if people knew what they are voting for all the time, but the result is binding. Something will happen because of this. Not every decision government make needs to be a vote, an election. There are many other gray areas of how to interact. Citizens labs. Finland has a senior citizen, so all policies related to old people needs to pass by them for a comment.
Yeah, but in a way, politicians should think or rethink their work, because maybe in 20 years' time it's not going to be the same.
I see, but we have to enter the shoes of the politicians. It's very hard to be from the government. And I know many politicians who ask people to comment, and sometimes comments are fierce or are useless. So institutions are weak. Instead of criticizing them, which we do because we must, it's important to recreate the bridges. So occupy the government. It's part of our life. It's not only voting for people, but how can I help? There are very few doors open, and it's really frustrating to be in the government or to help the government. But the only solution for democracy is more democracy. And then I got what France was doing these days. So lots of protests in the streets for many reasons. Part of his answers was a consultation, was more democracy, more debate. Does it work? Not as a medical solution, but it's better than, okay, I know what to do. Leave it with me, everything will be fine. Because that usually creates mistrust, and because of the diversity, just one person making decision for all, it might lead to forgetting people on the way.
Okay, let's go to a tricky question.
Yep.
How is governments going to run in 20 years' time?
I hope governments are more invisible. And by doing visible, I mean like Estonia, where public services, the process of public service is so well designed that you don't realize you're all the time talking to the government. The same experience you have your phone. Everything in your phone is quite invisible because it's so designed for user experience. But I hope the government will be more focused as a platform, more connecting people and stakeholders, and less doing things. It doesn't mean don't do things only state can do, but it means that you work as technology to connect things and not doing the job alone.
But we'll have governments then.
Always.
Always?
Always.
That's good. Okay, before we have to finish, because we still have like 3-4 minutes, some other good examples, or, well, let's say positive or negative, that you faced from ITS or that you learned that blockchain, well, we should prevent things or that we should apply?
Very simple ones. We just released it last week, the blockchain for universities to register the diploma. So forging the diploma is a big problem for hiring people or entering the public service. So now there's an image in the blockchain that is immutable. Mm-hmm. So your diploma, anyone can check if you graduated from the school or not. So
good.
This is one of the things.
Yeah.
The other things for the Monetary Value Commission, we are creating an investor digital ID. This means we can create open banking for several financial services. If we leave more people use the services, then we create wealth in the country. There's still lots to be done. But I think every time we use the technology to scale up something that is good for the public interest, there's a gain in that.
So there is a lot of gain that does not have to be connected with money when talking about blockchain.
No, not at all. Cryptocurrencies is kind of a phone, and you only think you have the app of your bank. You can do everything you can do with a phone. You can do with blockchain.
Okay, and and I think it's something that you always say, good data versus big data.
Oh, yes.
Because when we talk about blockchain, we're talking about data. And
I'm from Brazil. So it's very likely that at some point I'll return to Brazil. To gather information, you don't need big data. You just need good data. So Fabro left Brazil. He will return. That's one entry point. So one of the ways we can protect privacy from people is to using the GDPR approach, which is what is the minimum amount of data you can collect from someone for the purpose that person allows you to do. You see, it's the inverse of governments and companies usually do. Give me all your data, because we never know, right? So it's always use the minimum amount of data and trashing the rest.
Yeah, but what do you do with everything that we've been spreading around for the last years? Because this is like, well, maybe we fix it for our next generations, but our generation maybe are lost.
The bad news is that the architecture we use for the previous data doesn't allow us to delete. Anyone who had a picture leaked knows it's impossible to remove from the web because we copy it and recopy and recopy it. But if you use blockchain self-sovereignty systems, where you give access to the data, we stop copying, and you have control. And if you want to throw the key out, or if you want to remove your data, you still can do it. So that's a good point where the technology really matters, because without a good technology you cannot implement policy. Technology matters, and policy matters, and people matters. So put all together, shake it, and that's the future.
And the matters of technology should face the people.
Always. Because government is us. Government is the most powerful institution ever.
Yeah. Fabro Steibel, it was a pleasure having you today also in here. We spent 30 minutes, it run the time, so thank you very much. Have safe trip going back home, and I hope they keep your data alive.
I hope.
Thank you very much, Fabro Steibel. Thank you, Fabro.